If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Let's continue. The sun hadn't fully risen when Megan walked through the imposing gates of the mansion. Her footsteps were silent on the flagstone walkway, and she clutched the strap of her worn-out backpack, feeling the weight of the cold New York City dawn. It was her 10th day working at this house, and she still couldn't quite believe a place like this actually existed. Sprawling gardens, a pool that looked like a small lake, enormous windows reflecting the timid morning light. Everything here breathed a kind of wealth she only knew from television. Megan was 23, but her face carried a weariness that didn't match her age. It was from years of struggle, of waking up before the sun, of working 2, sometimes 3 different jobs, just to pay the rent on their cramped apartment in the Bronx. She and her younger sister, Jessica, were squeezed into that tiny space, but it was all they had. And now, with Jessica 5 months pregnant and the baby's father out of the picture, Megan felt the weight of responsibility double on her shoulders. She entered through the back door as she always did. The kitchen was quiet, and the smell of fresh coffee told her that Irene, the head housekeeper, had already started her day. Irene was a woman with grey hair pulled back in a perfect bun, her eyes sharp but kind, and a posture that revealed decades of experience in her profession. She was the only one who had greeted Megan with any warmth when the young woman started working there. "Good morning, honey," Irene said, holding out a cup of coffee for Megan. "Here, you need some energy. We've got a lot of work ahead of us today." Megan accepted the cup with a shy smile and thanked her quietly. Irene was generous like that, always with a kind word, a caring gesture. It was different from the rest of the house, where everything felt cold and distant, despite all the luxury. "How's your sister?" Irene asked as she gathered the day's cleaning supplies. Megan sighed, feeling the familiar knot tighten in her chest. "She's okay, all things considered. But the checkups are so expensive, Irene. I don't know how I'm going to pay for everything. The community clinic has no openings and her pregnancy is high risk. She needs a specialist, but everything is out of pocket, and it all costs a fortune." Irene nodded in understanding. "I know how it is, honey. Life isn't easy for folks like us who start with nothing. But you're strong, Megan. I see that in you. God will make a way, you'll see." Megan wanted to believe her, but faith was getting harder to hold on to. There were so many bills, so many worries, and now in this huge empty house, she felt even more lost. Because this mansion, for all its splendor, exuded a deep sadness. There was something very wrong here, something Megan couldn't yet fully grasp. Irene broke the silence. "You must be wondering why the house is so quiet, huh?" Megan nodded, unsure if she should be asking questions about her employers' lives. The housekeeper took a deep breath and lowered her voice, as if sharing a painful secret. "The little girl, Sophia, she's in the hospital. It's been almost a month now. She has a blood disorder, a very serious one. The doctors say she needs an urgent transfusion, but her blood type is extremely rare. They're searching every blood bank in the country, but so far nothing." Megan felt her heart clench. A child. She didn't even know there was a child in the house. She'd never seen any pictures, any scattered toys, nothing to indicate the presence of someone so small. "How old is she?" Megan asked, her voice thick with emotion. 5 years old, Irene replied, her eyes filling with tears. "A beautiful girl, full of life, with an easy laugh. But now she's lying there, in that cold hospital, fighting to survive. Mr. Miller, her father, goes every day. He comes home completely destroyed. And Mrs. Miller, the mother, she practically lives at the hospital. They're desperate, Megan, truly desperate." Megan fell silent, absorbing the information. Suddenly, all the coldness in the house made sense. It wasn't arrogance or indifference. It was pain. It was fear. It was the heavy silence of people on the verge of losing what they held most precious. "And there's nothing that can be done?" Megan asked, almost in a whisper. Irene shook her head. "Only if they find someone with the same blood type, but it's so rare, Megan. So rare, they call it Bombay or something like that. The doctor said almost nobody has it. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack." Megan felt a chill run down her spine. A rare blood type. Those words echoed inside her with a strange force. She remembered years ago, when she had to get blood tests after a motorcycle accident. The doctor at the clinic had been surprised by the result and told her to write it down, to keep that information, because it was important. It was a rare type, he'd said. Very rare. She had even jotted it down on a piece of paper she kept in her wallet, but she'd never paid it much mind. After all, what difference could it make in her life? "Irene," Megan began, her voice trembling. "That blood type. What's the name again?" "Bombay. Why?" Megan swallowed hard. I think I have that type." The silence that followed was absolute. Irene turned slowly to face Megan, her eyes wide, the coffee cup trembling in her hand. "What did you say?" With trembling fingers, Megan opened her backpack and found her wallet. From inside, she pulled out a yellowed piece of paper, folded several times. It was the result of those tests from years ago. She carefully unfolded it and showed it to Irene. The housekeeper took the paper and read it, her eyes scanning the lines with urgency. When she finished, she looked at Megan as if she were witnessing a miracle. "Oh my God," Irene whispered. "Oh my God, Megan, you can save that little girl's life." Megan felt her legs go weak. Save someone's life. Her, Megan, who had never had anything, who had always been invisible, who passed through places without anyone even noticing her. Suddenly she had something in her veins that could change everything. "But I'm just the housekeeper," Megan said, her voice faint and uncertain. "They don't even know I exist. Why would they want my blood?" Irene gripped Megan's hands tightly. "It doesn't matter who you are, honey. What matters is that you have the chance to save a life, a precious life. You're going to talk to Mr. Miller today. He'll be back from the hospital soon. You're going to show him this paper and offer to help." Fear washed over Megan. What if it doesn't work? What if they don't accept? What if... Irene cut her off. "There are no what-ifs, Megan. This is bigger than any fear you might feel. This is about life and death. It's about a little girl who wants to come home, who wants to play, who wants to grow up. You're going to do this, and I'll be right by your side." Megan nodded, still shaking, still scared, but feeling something new growing inside her. It wasn't courage, not exactly. It was something deeper. It was the sudden understanding that sometimes life puts you exactly where you need to be, even if you don't understand why. The next few hours passed, in a blur. Megan cleaned the house as she always did, but her mind was far away. She thought about the little girl in the hospital, about the pain of those parents, about the absurd possibility that she, of all people, could make a difference. It was almost noon when Robert Miller walked through the front door. Megan saw him from a distance and her heart pounded. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, his dark hair starting to grey at the temples. He wore an expensive suit, but it was wrinkled as if it had been thrown on, in a hurry. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, and an expression of absolute defeat was etched into every line of his face. Irene approached Megan and whispered, "Now. You're going to talk to him now." Megan's legs trembled, but she obeyed. She approached timidly as Irene got Robert's attention. "Mr. Miller," the housekeeper said in a firm voice, "I need you to hear something very important." Robert stopped and looked at them, clearly too exhausted to care about anything other than his daughter. "Irene, I really don't have the headspace for anything right now. It's about Sophia." Irene insisted. "It's about the transfusion." That got his attention immediately. His eyes fixed on Irene with an almost desperate intensity. "What about the transfusion?" Irene gently pushed Megan forward. "Megan here, the new cleaning lady. She has Sophia's blood type." Robert stood completely still. He looked at Megan as if trying to process her words, as if they were spoken in a language he didn't fully understand. "What?" Megan, her voice trembling, held out the paper with the test results. I had some tests done a few years ago and the doctor said my blood type was very rare. I didn't know what it meant, but I have it here. It's written down." Robert took the paper with shaky hands. He read it once, then read it again, and then looked at Megan as if she were a ghost, an apparition, something impossible. Is this real?" "Yes, sir," Megan replied. "I don't know if it will work, but if I can help your daughter, I want to do it." Robert kept staring at her. and Megan saw something she had never seen on a rich man's face. She saw tears. She saw hope. She saw something break inside him. You would do that? You would donate your blood for her? Megan nodded. Yes, sir. I would. Robert covered his face with his hands and began to cry. They were deep, uncontrolled sobs, the sobs of someone who had been carrying the weight of the world and suddenly saw a light at the end of the tunnel. Irene came over and put a hand on his shoulder, emotional herself. When Robert finally composed himself, he looked at Megan with a gratitude that was almost palpable. I don't know who you are, he said, his voice hoarse. I don't know what you do here. I didn't even know you existed until 2 minutes ago. But you could save my daughter. You could give me my little girl back. He pulled out his cell phone with trembling fingers and immediately called the hospital. Megan heard fragments of the conversation, Robert explaining about the test results, about the possibility of a compatible donor, about the urgency of confirming everything as quickly as possible. When he hung up, he turned to Megan. I'm taking you to the hospital right now. You'll undergo more detailed tests. If you're a match, the transfusion could happen this week. Please tell me you're serious. Tell me you won't back out. Megan looked into the man's eyes and saw all the vulnerability in the world. He was no longer a rich, distant employer. He was a desperate father, a human being broken by pain. I won't back out, sir, Megan said. I promise. Robert nodded, and in an unexpected gesture took Megan's hands. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. Irene watched it all, tears streaming down her face. Megan felt like she was living in a dream, something unreal, something too big for her small, difficult life. Minutes later, Megan was sitting on the leather seat of Robert's luxury car, being driven to one of the most expensive and sophisticated hospitals in New York City. She looked out the window, watching the city fly by, and wondered how everything had changed so fast. Yesterday she was invisible. Today she was the hope of an entire family. The hospital was immense, modern, and immaculate. Megan had never set foot in a place like it. She was taken directly to the hematology department, where a team of doctors was waiting for her. Robert explained everything quickly, and the doctors examined the paper Megan had brought. We're going to run a full panel of tests, explained one of the doctors, a man in a white lab coat with a serious expression. If there's indeed a full match, we can perform the transfusion within 48 hours. Megan nodded and was led to a collection room. She felt the needles enter her arm, felt the blood being drawn, and thought about how strange it was that this red liquid running through her veins could mean the difference between life and death for someone. While they waited for the results, Robert took her to the room where Sophia was. He stopped at the door and looked at Megan. Do you want to meet her? Megan hesitated. She didn't know if it was appropriate, if it was right. But something inside her wanted to see the girl. She wanted to put a face to the hope she was carrying. Okay. They entered the room. It was a bright space, filled with medical equipment, and in a small bed lay Sophia. Megan's heart ached. The girl was so small, so fragile. Her brown hair was spread across the white pillow, and her skin had a frightening pallor. But when she opened her eyes and saw her father, a smile lit up her face. Daddy, Sophia said, her voice weak but full of love. You came back. Robert went to her and kissed her forehead with a tenderness that made Megan's eyes burn. I'm back, my princess, and I brought a very special friend to meet you. Sophia looked at Megan with curiosity. Who are you? Megan approached slowly and smiled. My name is Megan, and I came here because I really want to help you get better. Sophia gave a faint smile. You're pretty, your eyes are sparkly. Megan felt tears welling up. Thank you, Sophia. You're beautiful too. In that moment, Megan knew she would do anything to save this little girl. It was no longer about a job, about being an employee in a rich house. It was about something much bigger. It was about life. Robert and Megan left the room shortly after, and he took her to the waiting area. There, sitting in an armchair, was Christine, Sophia's mother. She was an elegant woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, and a cold, gaze that sized Megan up with immediate suspicion. Robert quickly explained the situation, and Christine listened in silence. When he finished, she looked at Megan with an expression that was hard to read. "So, you're the maid." Megan's blood ran cold. There was no gratitude in that tone. There was something close to contempt. "Yes, ma'am. I work at your house." Christine nodded slowly. "Well, if you can really help my daughter, I appreciate it. But I expect you to understand your place in all this." Robert looked at his wife with a mixture of surprise and disappointment. "Christine, for God's sake, she could save our daughter's life." Christine looked away. "I know that, Robert, but let's not mix things up. She's doing the right thing, and we'll pay her for it. Nothing more." Megan felt humiliation burn in her chest, but she said nothing. She just lowered her eyes and waited. Robert, visibly embarrassed, touched Megan's shoulder. "Ignore that, please. You're doing something incredible." Megan just nodded, but something inside her had shifted. She realized that even if she saved a life, she would still be seen as just the maid. She would still be invisible in their world. The next few hours were an agonizing wait. Megan was cleared to go home, with the promise that she would be called as soon as the test results were ready. Robert insisted on driving her to the Bronx, and when they arrived at the rundown apartment building where Megan lived, he fell silent, clearly shocked by the poverty he saw. "This is where you live?" Megan nodded, feeling ashamed. "Yes, sir. It's not much, but it's what I have." Robert looked around, seeing the potholed streets, the crowded buildings, the trash piled up on the corners. "And you come from here to my house every day on the subway?" "Yes, sir, 3 transfers. It takes almost 2 hours. Robert closed his eyes and shook his head. "Megan, I had no idea. I never paid attention. I never thought about who the people working in my house were." Megan gave a sad smile. "No one ever does, sir." He looked at her with a new expression. There was respect there. There was recognition. "I'm going to change that, I promise." Megan got out of the car and went inside. Jessica was lying on the old couch, her belly now quite prominent, and she looked at her sister in surprise. "Meg, what happened? Why did you come home in a car? Who was that man?" Megan sat down next to her sister and told her everything. Jessica listened in silence, her eyes wide, and when Megan finished, she squeezed her sister's hand tightly. "You're going to save a little girl, Meg. You, my sister." Megan smiled, but there was a heaviness in her heart. "I am, Jess, but I don't know what comes after this." 2 days later, the call came. It was Robert, his voice thick with emotion. "Megan, the tests came back positive. You're a match, a perfect match. The transfusion is happening tomorrow." Megan's heart raced. "Tomorrow? Tomorrow. I'll pick you up early in the morning. And Megan, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." Megan hung up the phone and looked at Jessica, who was waiting anxiously. "It's a match, Jess. It's a match." The 2 sisters hugged and cried together, not knowing that this was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The next day, Megan was back at the hospital. She was prepped for the transfusion, and the doctors explained the whole procedure. It would be quick, they said, and she might feel a little weak afterward, but nothing serious. Megan lay down on the gurney and closed her eyes. She thought of Sophia, that small, fragile girl fighting for her life. She thought of Robert, that desperate father, and she thought of herself, of how sometimes life puts you exactly where you need to be. The transfusion took a few hours. Megan felt a growing dizziness, but she held on. When it was over, the doctors took her to a room to rest while Sophia received the blood in another part of the hospital. Robert entered the room where Megan was and sat by the bed. He held her hand, and Megan saw tears in his eyes. "You saved my daughter," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You gave her a chance to live. I will never forget this. Never." Megan smiled weakly. "I just did what was right, sir." Robert shook his head. "No, Megan. You did much more than that. You did something most people would never do. And I want you to know that from now on, you're not just an employee to me. You're someone very special." Megan didn't know what to say. She just squeezed his hand back and closed her eyes, feeling exhaustion take over. In the hours that followed, Sophia began to respond positively to the transfusion. Her color returned, her breathing improved, and the doctors announced that the worst was over. She was recovering. Robert rushed to Megan's room with the news. Megan cried with relief and gratitude, and for the first time in a long time, she felt she had done something truly important with her life, but she didn't know that this blood donation was just the beginning. She didn't know that the bond created that day would change everything. She didn't know that the life she knew was about to be transformed in ways she could never have imagined. And as Sophia recovered in the hospital, held by her mother and father, Megan returned to her humble home in the Bronx, carrying a strange feeling in her chest that something much bigger was just getting started. When Megan got home that night, still weak from the transfusion, she found Jessica waiting anxiously at the door. Her younger sister helped her inside, made her a warm cup of tea, and sat beside her on the old couch. "Tell me everything, Meg. How did it go?" Megan took a sip of tea and felt the warmth spread through her. She told her about the hospital, about lying on that gurney as her blood was drawn to save a life. She told her about Robert's look of gratitude, and she told her about Christine, the elegant, cold woman who looked at her with contempt. Jessica frowned. "She didn't thank you." Megan shook her head. "She doesn't have to thank me, Jess. I didn't do it for thanks." "But it's not fair, Meg," Jessica protested. "You saved her daughter." Megan sighed. She had always known her place in the world. It was no use dreaming of recognition from people who lived in another reality. "I just want the little girl to be okay," Megan said. "The rest doesn't matter." But it did matter. Deep down, Megan knew it mattered, because something had changed inside her that day. She had looked into Sophia's eyes and seen purity, innocence, a whole life ahead. The following days were strange. Megan returned to work at the mansion, still recovering from the transfusion. Irene treated her with special care, preparing nutritious meals. Robert, whenever he passed her in the hallways, always stopped to ask how she was doing. Christine, on the other hand, barely looked in her direction, and when she did, it was with an expression Megan couldn't decipher. A week after the transfusion, Robert announced that Sophia would be discharged from the hospital the next day. The news filled the house with a different energy. Irene spent the entire day preparing everything, cleaning, organizing, filling the rooms with fresh flowers. Megan also worked with special dedication. She wanted everything to be perfect. For Sophia, she wanted the little girl to come home and feel she was in a place full of love and care. That evening, as Megan was about to leave, Robert called her into the living room. She entered timidly, still not used to being noticed in that house. "Megan, please have a seat," Robert said, gesturing to one of the luxurious armchairs. Megan hesitated, but Robert insisted, and she complied, feeling uncomfortable on the overly soft sofa. "I wanted to talk to you before Sophia gets home tomorrow," Robert began, his voice thick with emotion. "I know you've only been working here for a few weeks, but what you did for my daughter, it's so much more than just a job." Megan didn't know what to say, so she just listened. "I want to give you a bonus, an amount that reflects the importance of what you did, and I want you to know that you will always have a place in this house." Megan felt her eyes burn. "Mr. Miller, I don't need money. I did what anyone would do." Robert shook his head. "No, Megan, you did what very few people would do. You gave a part of yourself without asking for anything in return. That's rare." He handed an envelope to Megan. She took it with trembling hands, and when she opened it, she saw an amount that made her heart race. It was more money than she earned in 6 months. It was enough to pay for all of Jessica's medical tests. I can't accept this," Megan whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "Yes, you can," Robert insisted, "and you will. For your sister, for the tests she needs, for you." Megan looked at the envelope and then at Robert. And then, for the first time since this all began, she broke down. The tears came hot and fast, and she cried with relief, with gratitude, with accumulated exhaustion. Robert came over and placed a hand on her shoulder in a fatherly gesture. "You're an incredible person, Megan. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." Megan wiped her tears and nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. From the bottom of my heart." When Megan left the mansion that night, she clutched the envelope to her chest as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. It was a chance to breathe. It was a chance to take care of Jessica. The next day, Megan arrived at work earlier than ever. She wanted to be there when Sophia arrived. Irene was also anxious, pacing back and forth, making sure everything was perfect. When the car pulled up, Megan was in the kitchen, but she heard the commotion. She heard Robert's voice, Christine's, and then a crystal-clear laugh, a child's laugh. Megan felt her heart warm. Irene appeared in the kitchen, her eyes shining. "She's here, Megan. The little girl is here. Do you want to go see her?" Megan hesitated. She didn't know if it was appropriate. But Irene took her by the hand and pulled her into the living room. There, in the middle of that luxurious room, was Sophia. She was rosier, stronger, wearing a pink dress full of ruffles, and when she saw Megan, her eyes lit up. "Megan!" Sophia cried, running towards her with open arms. Megan knelt and received the little girl's hug, feeling that small, warm body against hers. Sophia smelled of baby shampoo and hope. "You came to see me," Sophia said, looking up at Megan with those big, bright eyes. "I did," Megan replied, her voice choked with emotion. "I wanted to see how you were doing." "I'm great," Sophia declared, with the typical excitement of a child. "Daddy said you helped me get better. Is that true?" Megan looked at Robert, who was watching the scene with a smile. "It is, Sophia. I was so happy I could help you." Sophia held Megan's face in her little hands. "You're my friend now." Megan felt the tears coming again, but held them back. "Yes, I am. Your friend." Christine watched from a distance with that closed-off expression Megan already knew. There was discomfort there, disapproval. But Sophia was happy, and Robert seemed moved, so Megan decided not to care. In the following days, something strange began to happen. Sophia constantly sought out Megan. She wanted her to play, to tell stories, to stay close. And Megan, despite knowing it wasn't part of her duties, couldn't deny the child anything. She told made-up stories about princesses who defeated dragons, about brave girls who saved entire kingdoms. Sophia listened with absolute attention, her eyes shining. "You make up the best stories, Megan," Sophia said one day as they sat in the garden. "You're like a fairy godmother." Megan laughed. "I'm no fairy godmother, Sophia. I'm just a regular person." "But you did magic," Sophia insisted. "Daddy said you saved me. Isn't that magic?" Megan touched the girl's face tenderly. "That was love, Sophia, not magic. It was love." And in that moment, Megan realized it was true. She loved this child. It was a spontaneous, pure, unconditional love. But not everything was perfect. Christine watched the growing bond between Sophia and Megan with increasing tension. One afternoon, when Robert wasn't home, she called Megan into the living room. "I need to speak with you," Christine said, her voice cold and authoritative. Megan entered the room with a heavy heart. "Yes, Mum." Christine looked at her with those icy blue eyes. "I appreciate what you did for my daughter. I truly do. But I need you to understand something. You are an employee in this house, and employees have their place. Sophia is a child and she's confused right now, but this will pass. So I need you to keep your distance. Do your job, but do not get emotionally involved with her." Megan felt something break inside her. "But you don't understand. Sophia likes me. Christine cut her off. "It doesn't matter what she likes right now. She's a child and she'll get over it. But if you continue to encourage this closeness, you'll create a dependency that isn't healthy. For either of you." Megan swallowed hard. "I only want what's best for her, ma'am." "So do I," Christine replied, and for the first time, Megan saw something close to vulnerability in her eyes. "I also want what's best for my daughter, and I know that deep down you're being kind. But the world doesn't work that way. People have their places. And the sooner Sophia learns, that the better." Megan nodded, not knowing what else to say. She left the room with a huge weight on her chest, because she knew Christine was wrong. The world didn't have to work that way, but she also knew she had no power to change anything. That night, Megan went home earlier than usual. Jessica immediately noticed something was wrong. "What happened, Meg?" Megan told her everything. About her bond with Sophia, about the love she felt for the girl, about Christine's order to keep her distance, and she told her how much it hurt because for the first time in a long time, she had felt like she mattered to someone. Jessica hugged her sister tightly. "You matter, Meg. You've always mattered. Don't let that woman make you believe otherwise." But Megan knew it wasn't that simple, because in the world she lived in, she was invisible. And no matter how much Robert treated her with respect, no matter how much Sophia loved her, the truth was she would always be the maid. And maids don't have a voice. They don't have a choice. They just obey. And so, with a broken heart and eyes full of unshed tears, Megan fell asleep that night, not knowing that the real storm was still to come. The days that followed were a silent torture for Megan. She performed her duties at the mansion with the same dedication, but now there was an invisible barrier between her and Sophia. Whenever the little girl approached, Megan had to find an excuse to move away. Whenever Sophia asked for a story, Megan had to say she had too much work. And every time she did it, she felt a piece of her heart break. Sophia didn't understand. How could she? To her, Megan was her friend, the person who had saved her life, who gave her affection and attention. And now suddenly Megan was cold, distant, always too busy. The confusion in the little girl's eyes was a knife twisting in Megan's chest. Irene watched it all with deep sadness. She knew the nature of the conflict, knew what Christine had demanded, and saw how it was hurting both Megan and Sophia. But she also knew she was just an employee, and employees don't question their employer's orders no matter how unjust. "You're doing the right thing," Irene said one morning as they prepared breakfast together. "I know it hurts, but you're protecting your job, protecting your life." Megan stirred her coffee too hard, trying to hold back tears. "But what about her, Irene? What about Sophia? She doesn't understand why I'm doing this. She must think I don't like her anymore." Irene sighed deeply. "Children are resilient, Megan. She'll get over it. In time, she'll forget." But Megan didn't believe that. And deep down, she didn't want Sophia to forget. Because what they had was real, pure and true. And Megan knew with every fiber of her being that what Christine was doing was wrong. Robert, for his part, was torn. He noticed the change in Megan's behavior, saw how his daughter suffered from the sudden distance, but he also faced constant pressure from Christine. Every night his wife talked about boundaries, social hierarchies, and the importance of Sophia growing up understanding her place in the world. "She's just a child, Robert," Christine would say as she got ready for bed. "She's confusing gratitude with affection, but it will pass. The less contact she has with the maid, the faster this will be over." Robert wanted to disagree, wanted to say his daughter wasn't confused, that the love Sophia felt for Megan was genuine, and there was nothing wrong with it. But he was tired, tired of the fights, tired of the constant tension, tired of trying to make everyone happy and failing miserably. So he stayed silent. And in his silence, he allowed the injustice to continue. But Sophia wasn't like the adults. Sophia didn't know how to be silent, how to hide her emotions, how to pretend everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. The little girl began to change. The smile that had lit up the house since her return from the hospital started to fade. She ate less, played less, and would sit for hours in the garden, just staring into space. One afternoon, Christine found her daughter crying softly in her room. The mother approached and sat on the bed beside her. "What's wrong, my love? Why are you crying?" Sophia wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Megan doesn't like me anymore, Mummy." Christine felt a pang in her chest, but kept her voice firm. "Of course she likes you, Sophia. She's just busy with her work. But she doesn't talk to me anymore." Sophia protested, her voice filled with childish anguish. "She doesn't tell stories, she doesn't play. Every time I get close, she leaves. Did I do something wrong, Mommy? I must have done something really wrong for her to treat me like this." Christine hugged her daughter, feeling a guilt she didn't want to admit. You didn't do anything wrong, my sweet girl. Nothing. It's just, people have their own lives. Megan has her family, her own problems. She can't be here playing with you all the time. Sophia pulled away and looked at her mother with those big, sad eyes. But I need her, Mommy, I need her. And in those simple words from a 5-year-old was a truth Christine didn't want to face. Her daughter really did need Megan, not out of a whim, not out of stubbornness, but for something deeper. Sophia had formed a strong emotional bond with that woman, and the abrupt severing of that bond was causing damage that was impossible to ignore. But Christine didn't know how to deal with it. She had been raised in a world where things had their place, where people knew their positions, where social boundaries were not crossed, and seeing her daughter break all those rules terrified her. That same night at dinner, Sophia barely touched her food. Robert tried to cheer her up, asking about her favorite toys, suggesting they watch a movie together. But Sophia just shook her head, her eyes fixed on her empty plate. After they put Sophia to bed, Robert confronted Christine in the living room. She's not okay, Christine. You see that, don't you? Christine poured herself a glass of red wine and took a sip before answering. She's going through a phase. It's normal. It will pass. This isn't normal, Robert retorted, frustration in his voice. Our daughter is suffering. She's unhappy, and we know exactly why. Christine turned to him, her eyes flashing. So what do you want, Robert? For me to let my daughter develop an emotional dependency on the maid? For her to grow up thinking there are no social differences? That the world is a fair place where everyone can be friends with everyone? I want you to let our daughter be happy, Robert said, his voice tired. I want you to see that what Megan did for us goes far beyond a job. She saved our daughter's life, Christine. She gave her own blood. And now you want to treat her like she's invisible. I don't treat her like she's invisible, Christine defended herself. I pay her salary. I gave her a generous bonus. But that doesn't mean she gets to become part of the family. Things don't work that way. Why not? Robert asked, genuinely confused. Why can't they work that way? Christine had no answer, or maybe she did, but didn't know how to articulate it. So she just turned her back and left the room, leaving Robert alone with his thoughts and his guilt. The weeks passed and the situation only worsened. Sophia started having nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night crying, calling for Megan. During the day she was listless, uninterested in anything. The toys that once delighted her were now forgotten in a corner. The book she loved remained closed. Robert took her to a pediatrician who ran a series of physical exams and found nothing wrong. He then suggested a consultation with a child psychologist. Christine was reluctant but eventually agreed. The psychologist, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Evans, spoke with Sophia for a long time. Afterward, she asked to speak with the parents alone. Your daughter is going through a serious emotional crisis, the doctor explained, her face grave. It's not physical, it's psychological. She feels abandoned by someone she considers very important. Robert and Christine exchanged glances. The doctor continued. Sophia repeatedly mentioned a person named Megan. She says Megan was her friend, but now she won't talk to her anymore. This is having a profound impact on the child's self-esteem. She's internalizing this distance as personal rejection, as if she's not worthy of love. Christine swallowed hard. But Megan is just our employee. Sophia can't develop that kind of dependency. The doctor looked at Christine with an expression that was not judgmental, but questioning. Children don't understand social hierarchies, Mrs. Miller. They understand affection, presence, and care. And when someone offers them that and then suddenly withdraws it, the emotional impact can be devastating. Robert ran a hand over his face. What should we do, doctor? The doctor sighed. Ideally, you would re-establish contact with this person. But if that's not possible, then we need to begin intensive psychological work to help Sophia process this loss in a healthy way. When they left the office, Robert was visibly shaken. Christine, on the other hand, maintained an impassive face, but inside she was in turmoil. She had never imagined that her decision to push Megan away could cause so much damage to Sophia. That night was one of the hardest of Robert's life. He stayed up late, sitting in Sophia's room watching his daughter sleep. The little girl had a sad expression, even in her sleep, her lips slightly parted, as if about to let out a sigh of sorrow. He loved that child more than anything in the world, and he was failing her. He was choosing marital peace over his daughter's happiness, and that realization was like poison in his veins. The next day, Robert found Megan in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, and when she saw him, she became visibly tense. "Megan, can I talk to you?" "Yes, sir," she replied, drying her hands on her apron. Robert looked like he had aged 10 years in the last few weeks. There were deep circles under his eyes, and his posture was slumped, defeated. "I know Christine asked you to keep your distance from Sophia," he began, and Megan nodded silently. "And I know you've been obeying, but Sophia isn't well, Megan. She's suffering a great deal from this." Megan felt tears threaten to fall, but she held them back. "I know, sir. I see it. I'm suffering too." Robert looked at her with a mixture of respect and sadness. "You really care about her, don't you?" "I love her, sir," Megan said with no hesitation in her voice. "I love that little girl as if she were my own, and staying away from her is killing me." Robert closed his eyes. "I don't know what to do, Megan. My wife thinks this is necessary. She's afraid Sophia will become emotionally dependent on you, but the psychologist said the separation is causing serious harm." "Then let me be near her again," Megan pleaded, forgetting her place as an employee for a moment. "Please, Mr. Miller, let me take care of her like before. I promise I won't cross any lines. I just want her to be happy." Robert opened his eyes and looked at Megan with a tortured expression. "I wish I could do that, Megan, I really do. But Christine, she won't accept it, and I can't start a war. At home, not now." Megan's heart sank. "So what's going to happen to Sophia?" Robert shook his head. "I don't know. The psychologist suggested therapy. We'll try that. And with time, maybe she'll get over it." "But what if she doesn't?" Megan asked, her voice trembling. "What if she keeps suffering? What will you do then?" Robert had no answer. He just touched Megan's shoulder in a gesture of helpless solidarity and left the kitchen, leaving her alone with her pain. Irene, who had witnessed the conversation from a distance, came over and hugged Megan. The young woman finally broke down, crying in the housekeeper's arms like a child. "It's not fair, Irene. It's not fair to her. It's not fair to me." "I know, honey. I know. But life is rarely fair to people like us." Things continued to get worse. Sophia stopped eating properly and began to lose weight. She didn't want to go to school, didn't want to play, didn't want to do anything. She just lay in her room or sat in the garden, submerged in a sadness that was frightening to see in such a small child. The doctors started talking about childhood depression. They prescribed medication, suggested changes to her routine, but nothing seemed to work. Sophia was wasting away before everyone's eyes, and no one knew how to reverse it. One night, during another heated argument between Robert and Christine, Sophia had a panic attack. She started hyperventilating, crying uncontrollably, screaming that she wanted Megan, that she needed Megan, that she couldn't take it anymore. Robert held her in his arms, trying to calm her, and when she finally fell asleep from exhaustion, he looked at Christine with an expression she had never seen before. It was anger. It was disappointment. It was desperation. "This has to end," he said, his voice firm. "Our daughter is destroying herself, and it's because of us." Christine was pale, visibly shaken by Sophia's attack. "I didn't know it would get this bad." "Well, now you know," Robert replied, "and we need to do something. We need to let Megan be close to Sophia again." Christine shook her head. "I can't do that, Robert. I can't just go back on my word and admit I was wrong." "So you'd rather watch our daughter waste away? You'd rather see her suffer? Is that more important to you than admitting a mistake?" "It's not about admitting a mistake," Christine shouted, tears in her eyes. "It's about what's right. It's about teaching our daughter to live in the real world, a world where people have their places." "What real world is that, Christine?" Robert shot back. "A world where we're all so miserable we can't love who we want to love. A world where a child can't receive affection from someone just because that person works for us. Is that the real world? Or is it just cruelty disguised as tradition?" Christine didn't answer. She just left the room and locked herself in the bathroom where she cried alone for hours. The next morning, Robert made a decision he knew he would regret, but he was desperate, out of options, backed into a corner. He called Megan into the living room and, with a heavy heart, said the words that would change everything. "Megan, I don't know how to say this." Megan already knew. She could see it in his eyes. She could feel it in the air. And yet, when the words came, it was like a stab wound. "I'm going to have to let you go." This silence that followed was absolute. Megan stood there, processing the information, trying to understand if she had heard correctly. "You're firing me?" she asked, her voice weak. Robert couldn't look at her. "Yes. I'm so sorry, Megan. I truly am. But it's complicated. The situation at home is unbearable. Christine thinks that if you're not here, Sophia will get over this faster. She'll stop asking for you. She'll stop suffering." Megan felt her legs give way. "But I didn't do anything wrong. I just tried to take care of her. I just tried to love her." "I know," Robert said, tears in his eyes. "And I will never forget what you did for us. You saved my daughter. But now, the way things are, I have no choice." Megan swallowed hard. "When?" "Starting today. I'm going to pay you 3 months severance and give you letters of recommendation. And if you need anything at all, you can call me." Megan shook her head, tears finally streaming down her face. "I don't want money, Mr. Miller. I want to be near Sophia. I want to be able to take care of her, to see her happy." Robert covered his face with his hands. "I want that too, Megan, I want that too, but I can't do it right now, I can't." Megan looked at the man, saw all his weakness, all his cowardice, and felt a mixture of pity and anger. He was choosing the peace of his marriage over his daughter's happiness. He was choosing the easy way out instead of the right way. "Fine," Megan said, her voice cold. "I'll leave. But you're going to have to explain to Sophia why I'm gone. You're going to have to look her in the eyes and lie. Because I did nothing wrong and you know it." Robert didn't answer. He just handed her an envelope with money and lowered his head, unable to face the silent judgment in the eyes of the woman who had saved his daughter. Megan gathered her things, said goodbye to Irene, who cried as she hugged her, and walked out of that mansion for the last time. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Because if she did, she knew she would fall apart. When she got home, Jessica greeted her, alarmed. "Meg, what happened? Why are you home so early?" Megan dropped her backpack on the floor and sat on the old couch. "He fired me, Jess, he fired me." "What do you mean? Why? You didn't do anything wrong." Megan told her everything. About Christine, about the orders to keep her distance, about Sophia's suffering, about Robert's cowardly decision. And as she spoke, she cried because the pain was real, deep and unbearable. Jessica hugged her sister and let her cry. And as Megan cried, something inside her broke and rebuilt itself at the same time, because she realized she had given everything, had loved with all her might, and it still wasn't enough. Because in the end, she would always be just the maid, the invisible one, the disposable one. That night, Megan barely slept. She thought of Sophia, imagined the little girl waking up the next day to find she was gone. She imagined the confusion, the pain, the feeling of abandonment, and that image tortured her in a way no physical pain ever could. Meanwhile, at the Miller mansion, Robert climbed the stairs to Sophia's room with a heavy heart. He knew he had to tell his daughter that Megan was gone, and he didn't know how to do it without destroying her even more. When he entered the room, Sophia was awake, looking out the window. "Good morning, my princess," he said, forcing a smile. "Good morning, Daddy," Sophia replied, her voice weak. "Where's Megan?" Robert sat on the bed and took a deep breath. "Honey, I need to tell you something. Megan, she's not going to be working here anymore." Sophia turned to him, her eyes wide. "Why?" "Because she got another job, a better job, and she had to leave." Sophia started to cry. "But she didn't say goodbye to me. She didn't say bye-bye." Robert hugged his daughter, feeling his own heart break. She wanted to, honey, but everything happened so fast. Sophia sobbed against her father's chest. She promised she was my friend. She promised. And now, she's gone without even talking to me. I must have done something really bad, Daddy, really, really bad. Robert held his daughter's face. No, my love, you didn't do anything wrong. Nothing. Megan loves you very much. But sometimes people have to leave, even when they don't want to. But Sophia didn't believe him, and in that moment something broke inside that 5-year-old child. Trust, innocence, the belief that the world was a safe place. It all crumbled, leaving only pain and confusion. And as Robert held his crying daughter, he knew, in the depths of his soul, that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. The days following Megan's departure were the darkest that house had ever known. Sophia fell into a state of deep apathy that frightened even the doctors. She no longer cried, no longer complained, no longer asked for anything. She just existed, in a state of disturbing silence. Christine tried to get close to her daughter, offering gifts, suggesting outings, but Sophia would look at her with empty eyes and turn her face away. It was as if the little girl had built a wall around herself and no one could get through. Robert took Sophia back to the psychologist, and this time Dr. Evans was more direct in her assessment. Your daughter is grieving, Mr. Miller, a real profound grief. To her, Megan didn't just leave. Megan abandoned her, and for a child who had already been through the recent trauma of her illness, that is devastating. But what do I do? Robert asked, desperate. How do I make my daughter happy again? Dr. Evans looked at him seriously. Honestly, Mr. Miller, I think the only real solution would be to bring Megan back, but I imagine that's not an option. Robert fell silent. It wasn't an option, or at least Christine wouldn't allow it to be. Then we'll need to start intensive therapy, the doctor continued. Frequent sessions, possibly medication if her condition doesn't improve, and lots of love and patience from you both. Robert nodded, but he knew that love and patience wouldn't be enough, because what Sophia needed, what she desperately wanted, was Megan, and he had taken that away from her. At home, the tension between Robert and Christine reached unbearable levels. They barely spoke, and when they did, it was only to argue about Sophia. Robert blamed Christine for the situation, and Christine defended herself by saying she was only protecting her daughter from a dangerous dependency. You weren't protecting anyone, Robert yelled one night after Sophia refused to eat again. You were protecting your pride, your twisted sense of superiority. And now our daughter is paying the price. Christine faced him with blazing eyes. I did what I thought was right. I did what any responsible mother would do. How was I supposed to know she would react like this? You were warned, Robert shot back. The psychologist told you, I told you, even Irene told you. But you wouldn't listen, because listening would mean admitting you were wrong, and Christine Miller is never wrong, is she? Christine felt tears well up, but held them back. Don't talk to me like that, Robert. I'm suffering too. I'm also desperate seeing my daughter like this. Then do something, Robert pleaded. Let me bring Megan back. Let her be near Sophia again. Please. Christine shook her head. I can't do that. I can't just go back on my word. What will people think? What will they say? Who cares what people think? Robert exploded. Our daughter is sick. She's wasting away. And you're worried about what society will say? It's not that simple, Christine said, but her voice was weak, uncertain. Yes, it is, Robert replied. It's exactly that simple. You choose your daughter, or you choose your pride. You can't have both. Christine didn't answer. She just left the room, leaving Robert alone with his growing frustration and despair. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Megan was trying to rebuild her life. She got another job, this time at a diner, earning less than half of what she made at the Miller's house. The work was hard, the hours were long, but at least it kept her busy enough not to think about Sophia so much. But the nights were the worst, because at night, when everything was quiet, Megan found herself haunted by memories. Sophia's laugh, the way the little girl held her hand, the stories they told together. It all came back with a painful intensity, and Megan would cry herself to sleep. Jessica tried to comfort her sister, but she knew no words could heal that kind of pain. Megan had lost more than a job. She had lost a child she loved like a daughter, and that kind of loss isn't easily overcome. One afternoon, 3 weeks after she was fired, Irene showed up at Megan's apartment. The young woman was surprised to see the housekeeper there in the Bronx, clearly uncomfortable in the neighborhood, but determined. "Irene, what are you doing here?" The housekeeper came in and sat on the old couch. "I had to see you, Megan. I had to tell you how things are." And then Irene told her everything. She told her about Sophia's condition, about how the girl wouldn't eat, play, or smile. She told her about the fights between Robert and Christine, about how the house had become a place of sadness and tension. She told her how much everyone missed Megan, even Christine, though she would never admit it. Megan listened with a heavy heart. "And Sophia? She's really bad." "Really bad," Irene confirmed. "She's not the same child. It's like the light inside her has gone out. The doctors say she has depression." "Depression, Megan, a 5-year-old child." Megan covered her face with her hands. "I want to help. I want to be there for her. But Mr. Miller sent me away. He chose peace in his house over her." Irene took Megan's hands. "I know, honey, and he regrets it. I see it in his eyes. He's destroying himself with guilt, but he doesn't know how to go back. He doesn't know how to fix what he's done." Megan wiped her tears. "And what do you want me to do? Go back and beg for my job? Humiliate myself?" "No," Irene replied. "I want you to wait. I came here to tell you that it's not over, Megan. This story isn't finished. Robert loves his daughter more than anything, and sooner or later he's going to make the right choice. And when he does, you need to be ready." Megan looked at the housekeeper with a mixture of hope and fear. "And what if he doesn't? What if he keeps choosing the easy way out?" "Then Sophia will waste away," Irene said with brutal honesty. "And he'll have to live with that for the rest of his life. But I believe he won't let that happen. I believe that deep down he's a good man. He's just lost right now." Irene stayed a few more minutes, talked with Jessica, asked about the pregnancy, and then left. But her words echoed in Megan's mind. It's not over. This story isn't finished. And Megan, against all logic, against all reason, began to believe it. Back at the mansion, Robert was at his breaking point. He had tried everything to cheer Sophia up. He took her to the park, to the movies, bought her new toys, hired clowns for parties. But nothing worked. Sophia just existed, in a terrifying state of absence. One night, he woke to the sound of crying. He got up and went to Sophia's room, where he found his daughter sitting up in bed, hugging her pillow, crying softly. "Honey, what's wrong?" Sophia looked at him with those big, sad eyes. "I dreamed about Megan, Daddy. She was calling me, telling me she loved me, but when I tried to go to her, she disappeared, and I was all alone. Always alone." Robert sat on the bed and hugged his daughter. "You're not alone, my love. I'm here. Your mother is here." Sophia pulled away and looked at him with an intensity that scared him. "But I want Megan, Daddy. I need her. Why did she leave? Did I make her leave?" "No," Robert protested. "You did nothing. It was my fault. It was all my fault." "Then bring her back," Sophia pleaded. "Please, Daddy, bring Megan back. I promise I'll eat. I promise I'll be a good girl. Just bring her back." Robert felt something inside him break in that moment. Seeing his daughter beg, seeing the pain in her eyes, he realized he couldn't go on like this. He could no longer choose Christine's pride over Sophia's happiness. He could no longer be a coward. "I will," he promised, his voice firm for the first time in weeks. "I'll bring Megan back. I promise." Sophia hugged him tightly. "You really promise, Daddy, promise." "I promise," Robert repeated. And this time, he knew he wouldn't break that promise. The next day, Robert confronted Christine. It wasn't an argument. It was a declaration. "I'm going to get Megan and bring her back, with or without you, with your support or without it. I don't care anymore. Our daughter is dying inside, and I'm not going to stand by and watch it happen." Christine turned pale. "Robert, you can't do that. You can't just—" "Yes, I can," he interrupted. And I will. Because at the end of the day, Christine, nothing matters more than our daughter. Not your pride, not social conventions, not what people will think. Nothing. Only she matters. Christine looked at her husband and saw a determination she had never seen before, and in that moment, she realized she had lost. Not the argument, not control, but the illusion that she could continue, living in a world where things had fixed unchangeable places. Fine, she said, her voice weak. Do what you think you have to do. Robert nodded, and without another word, left the house. He had a promise to keep, and nothing was going to stop him. Robert drove through the streets of New York with a determination he hadn't felt in a long time. He only had the address from Megan's employee file, and as he approached the Bronx, the reality of her life revealed itself to him in a brutal way. The streets were full of potholes, raw sewage, ran in open gutters in some places, and the buildings were crammed together, a mix of unfinished construction and tenement houses. Children played barefoot in the street, and the smell of garbage mixed with food hung in the air. It was a world completely different from the one he knew, a world he was aware existed but had never truly seen up close. When he finally found the address, Robert parked his car and stared at the small building with its exposed brick walls and worn-out facade. This was where Megan lived, where she returned every day after cleaning his immense mansion. The contrast was so stark that Robert felt ashamed. He got out of the car and knocked on the door. Jessica answered, her pregnant belly now very prominent, and she was surprised to see a man in a suit and tie at her door. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. "I'm Robert Miller. I need to speak with Megan." Jessica tensed immediately. "You're the boss who fired my sister." Robert lowered his head. "Yes, and I'm here to ask her to come back." Jessica laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "You fired her when she did. Nothing wrong. She saved your daughter's life, and you threw her out on the street. And now you come here asking her to come back. You've got some nerve." "I know," Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. "I know I was a coward. I know I did the wrong thing. But my daughter is suffering, and Megan is the only one who can help. Please let me talk to her." Jessica stared at him for a long moment, assessing, judging. Then she sighed and opened the door. "Come in. But if you hurt my sister again, I swear there's not enough money in the world to protect you from me." Robert entered the small apartment. Everything was simple, worn but clean and tidy. Megan was sitting on the old couch in simple clothes, her hair in a ponytail. When she saw him, she froze, as if seeing a ghost. "Mr. Miller," she whispered, slowly standing up. "Megan," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I need to talk to you." Jessica crossed her arms. "I'm staying right here. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of me." Robert nodded. "Fine." He turned to Megan and took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. I did the most cowardly thing a father could do. I put the peace of my home above my daughter's happiness. I fired you even though I knew you had done nothing wrong. And now Sophia is wasting away, Megan. She doesn't eat, she doesn't sleep, she doesn't play. The doctors say she has depression, childhood depression, because of me, because of my cowardice." Megan felt tears welling up, but remained firm. "And what do you want me to do?" "I want you to come back," Robert said. "Not as a maid, not as an employee, but as someone essential to my daughter's life, someone she loves and needs. I'll pay you whatever you want. I'll give you any conditions. But please, Megan, come back. Help my daughter be happy again." Megan looked at Jessica, who shook her head in disapproval. "Meg, you can't just go back. He hurt you, he fired you, and now he comes here begging because he needs you. And when his wife gives the order again, he'll throw you out again." Robert looked at Jessica. "Christine won't interfere anymore. I've already made it clear to her that this time I'm in charge, and if she doesn't like it, she knows where the door is." Jessica raised her eyebrows, surprised by his firmness. Megan was silent for a long moment. She looked at the man who had caused her so much pain and saw sincerity in his eyes. But she also saw weakness. She saw someone who had failed once and could fail again. "If I come back," Megan began, her voice steady, "it won't be like it was before. I won't be treated as invisible. I won't be told to stay away from Sophia. And I won't be fired again just because your wife thinks I don't know my place. Robert nodded vigorously. You will have all the respect you deserve. You can be near Sophia whenever she needs you. And no one, absolutely no one, will ever send you away again. You have my word. Megan looked at her sister, who was still suspicious but no longer objected. Okay, Megan said finally. I'll come back. But not for you. Not for the money. I'm coming back for Sophia. Because I love that little girl. And because I know she needs me. Robert covered his face with his hands and let the tears come. Thank you, Megan. You have no idea how much this means. Megan grabbed her backpack and looked at Jessica. I'll be back before dinner, okay? And if anything at all happens, I'll call you. Jessica hugged her sister. Be careful, Meg, and don't let them walk all over you again. I won't, Megan promised. She followed Robert to the car. As she got into the luxury vehicle again, she felt a strange sense of déjà vu. It was as if time had rewound, but now everything was different. She was different, stronger, more aware of her own worth. During the drive to the mansion, Robert told her everything. About the nights Sophia spent crying, about the nightmares, about how the little girl had begged him to bring Megan back. And Megan listened with a heavy heart, imagining the suffering of the child she loved so much. When they arrived at the mansion, Megan felt a mix of familiarity and strangeness. This place had been her workplace, but it had also been where she found a true and deep love for a child. Irene was in the kitchen when she saw them enter. The housekeeper dropped the spoon she was holding and ran to hug Megan, crying with joy. Thank God you're back, thank God. Megan hugged the housekeeper tightly. How is she, Irene? Not good, honey. Not good at all. But now that you're back, everything will get better. I know it will. Robert looked at Megan. She's in her room. Do you want to go up now? Megan nodded, her heart pounding. Yes. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like an eternity. When she reached the door to Sophia's room, she stopped and took a deep breath. Then she knocked lightly. Come in, a weak voice said from inside. Megan opened the door and entered. Sophia was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, her face pale and her eyes sunken. When she saw Megan, the little girl froze, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Megan, she whispered. Hi, Sophia, Megan said, her voice choked with emotion. I'm back. Sophia kept staring at her, motionless. Are you really back? Or am I dreaming again? Megan approached the bed and sat beside the little girl. It's not a dream, my love. It's real. I'm back. And then Sophia broke down. She threw herself into Megan's arms and began to cry desperately, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Megan held her tightly, crying with her, stroking the girl's hair, whispering words of comfort. I thought you abandoned me, Sophia cried. I thought you didn't like me anymore. Never, Megan said with conviction. I never abandoned you. I never stopped liking you. I love you, Sophia. I love you so much. Then why did you go away? Sophia asked, her face still buried in Megan's chest. Megan looked up and saw Robert standing in the doorway, watching the scene with tears streaming down his face. Because sometimes adults do the wrong thing, Megan explained. Sometimes they get scared and make bad decisions. But I never wanted to leave. And now I'm here. And I'm not leaving again. I promise. You really promise? I really, truly promise. Sophia hugged Megan even tighter, as if afraid she would disappear if she let go. And Megan let the girl hold on for as long as she needed, because she knew that hug was healing something broken inside Sophia. It was giving back the trust, the security, the love that had been so brutally taken away. Robert quietly left the room and went downstairs. Christine was in the living room, sitting in an armchair with a glass of wine. When she saw him, she looked at him with an unreadable expression. You brought her back. I did, Robert replied, and she's staying, with or without you. Christine took a sip of wine and was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed. I went up to her room a little while ago. I saw them. I saw how Sophia was clinging to her, and I realized you were right. I was wrong. Robert was surprised. It was the first time he had ever heard Christine admit a mistake so openly. I don't know how to deal with this, Christine continued, her voice vulnerable in a way Robert rarely heard. I was raised in a world where things had an order, where everyone had their place, and seeing my daughter love someone who isn't from our class, it scares me, because I don't know how to fit that into my worldview. Robert sat beside his wife. Maybe you don't have to fit it in, maybe you just have to accept that the world is bigger than the rules you were taught, that love doesn't respect social class, and that our daughter found something real, something true in Megan, and to deny her that would be the greatest cruelty we could commit. Christine wiped away a stray tear. I just want her to be happy. I just want my daughter to be happy. Then let Megan do that for her, Robert said. Let Megan bring back the light that went out. And in time, maybe you'll even understand what Sophia sees in her. Christine didn't reply, but there was a shift in her eyes, an opening, a possibility. In the following weeks, the transformation in Sophia was nothing short of miraculous. The little girl started eating again, playing again, smiling again. The sparkle returned to her eyes, and with it came a joy that had been lost. Megan was always nearby, telling stories, playing in the garden, helping with homework. And Sophia blossomed under that attention and love. But the transformation wasn't limited to Sophia. The entire dynamic of the house changed. Robert began to see Megan in a completely new light, not as an employee, but as an essential part of his family's emotional structure. He talked to her, asked for her opinion on decisions related to Sophia, and respected her suggestions. Christine, for her part, began to watch Megan more closely. And the more she watched, the more she saw things that bothered her, but not in the way she expected. She saw genuine kindness. She saw infinite patience. She saw a selfless love that she, Christine, struggled to offer her own daughter. And that realization was painful, but also revealing. One afternoon, Christine found Megan in the garden with Sophia. They were laughing, and Sophia was teaching Megan how to make a flower crown. Christine watched from a distance, and something inside her moved. Envy, yes, but also a reluctant admiration. She approached slowly. "Can I join?" she asked, her voice hesitant. Sophia and Megan looked at her in surprise. Sophia nodded. "Yes, you can, Mommy." Christine sat on the grass, something she never did, and started to help with the flowers. It was clumsy. Her hands weren't used to that kind of manual work, but she tried. And as she tried, she watched Megan and saw how she handled Sophia, the care, the attention, the pure love that emanated from every gesture. "You're good with her," Christine said suddenly, surprising even herself. Megan looked at her, also surprised. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller." "No," Christine said, shaking her head. "Not thank you. It's the truth. You're good with my daughter in a way that I don't know how to be. And I was afraid of that. Afraid that she would love you more than she loves me." Megan was silent, not knowing what to say. Christine continued, "But I realize something. Love isn't a competition. Sophia can love me and love you, too, Sam, and maybe I need to learn from you. Learn to be more present, more affectionate, more like you are with her." Megan felt her eyes burn. "Mrs. Miller, Sophia loves you very much. She will always love you. You're her mother." Christine smiled sadly. "But you're something more, aren't you? You're her mother of the heart." And in those words, there was a surrender, an acceptance, a profound change that marked the beginning of something new. The months passed, and life in the Miller mansion was completely transformed. Megan was no longer treated as an employee. She had her own room, ate with the family, and participated in all decisions related to Sophia, and the little girl flourished in ways no one could have predicted. One night at dinner, Sophia asked a question that took everyone by surprise. "Megan, why don't you live here forever? Why do you have to go home every day?" Megan looked at Robert and Christine, unsure how to answer. Robert cleared his throat. Actually, Sophia, I was thinking about that. And I talked to your mother. And we wanted to make Megan an offer. Megan looked at him curiously. We want to legally adopt you, Robert said, his voice firm but emotional. Not as an employee, not as a nanny, but as a daughter, as part of this family. Because you're already part of it, Megan, and we want to make it official. The silence that followed was absolute. Megan stared at Robert as if she hadn't understood his words. You want to adopt me, she whispered. We want to, Christine corrected, and for the first time since Megan had met her, there was warmth in her voice. You saved our daughter in two ways, Megan. You saved her body with your blood, and you saved her soul with your love. You're not an employee, you're family. Megan covered her face with her hands and began to cry. They were tears of shock, of joy, of relief, of a happiness so immense it couldn't be contained. Sophia jumped from her chair and ran to hug Megan. You're going to be my real sister. Megan hugged the girl, still crying. I already am your sister, my love. I have been for a long time. Robert stood up and came closer. So you accept? Megan looked at this family, at these people who had caused her pain, but also offered her love, and she saw a chance to have something she never had. A real family, a place to belong. I accept, she said, her voice choked with emotion. Yes, I accept. The adoption process wasn't simple. There was bureaucracy, paperwork, hearings at the courthouse. There were moments when it seemed it would never be approved, that the judges wouldn't understand the unusual situation. But Robert hired the best lawyers and fought with all his might. There was also resistance from their social circle, from friends of the Miller family who couldn't understand how a wealthy couple could adopt an adult, especially one who had been their maid. Gossip circulated at the country clubs, and snide remarks were made at elegant parties. But Robert and Christine stood firm, facing every criticism with their heads held high. And so did Megan, discovering a strength within herself she never knew she had. Throughout this period, Megan continued to live at the mansion, but now with a completely different status. She had a voice in decisions, joined them for meals as a family member, and Sophia introduced her to everyone as her sister of the heart. Jessica watched it all unfold, still suspicious at first, but gradually seeing that this family was truly changing, truly making a genuine space for her sister. 9 months after Megan had first walked through that gate as a cleaning lady, she walked through it again. But this time it was as the adopted daughter of Robert and Christine Miller. Legally, officially, permanently. The party they threw was small, just close family and the most intimate friends. Megan wore a simple but beautiful dress, and Sophia never let go of her hand. Jessica was there too, with her newborn daughter, Claire, in her arms. Robert gave an emotional speech. Today is not an ordinary day. Today is the day our family truly becomes complete. Megan taught us that family isn't defined by blood or money. It's defined by love, by presence, by choice, and we chose her, just as she chose us. Christine also spoke, and her transformation was visible. I spent my whole life believing in rigid rules, in social divisions, in predetermined places, but this extraordinary woman showed me that the world can be different, that love knows no boundaries, and that being a mother isn't about giving birth, it's about being present, about loving unconditionally. Megan, you taught me how to be a better mother, thank you. Megan couldn't give a speech. She just hugged each of them, crying with happiness, and thanked them for this improbable chance to rebuild her life. The years that followed were filled with growth, challenges, but mostly love. Megan went back to school, encouraged by Robert, and graduated with a degree in education. She began working with vulnerable children, bringing them the same love she had offered Sophia. Sophia grew up strong, healthy, and well-adjusted. She had 2 mothers now, and she loved them both in different but equally profound ways. Christine had changed, becoming more present, more affectionate, more open, and Megan had found not just a family, but a true home. Jessica and Claire also became part of that extended family unit. Robert helped Jessica get a better job, and she was able to move into a decent house. The two sisters remained close, and Megan never forgot where she came from. Irene continued to work at the house for a few more years until Robert and Christine insisted she retire with a generous pension. She did, but she visited often, proud to have witnessed that impossible transformation. One afternoon, 10 years after that first day, Megan walked through the gate as a maid. She was sitting in the garden watching Sophia, now a 15-year-old teenager, read a book under a tree. Robert sat down beside her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Megan smiled. "I'm thinking about how strange life is. How one moment can change everything. If I didn't have that rare blood type, if I hadn't agreed to the transfusion, none of this would have happened." Robert shook his head. "I believe some things are destiny, Megan. You were exactly where you needed to be at the exact moment you needed to be there. And because of that, you saved much more than Sophia's life. You saved this entire family." Megan looked at the man who had been her boss, then her tormentor, and finally her adoptive father. And she saw kindness, growth, transformation. "I was saved too," she said. "By you, by this family." Sophia looked up from her book and saw them talking. She smiled and waved, and Megan waved back, her heart full of a love so big it felt impossible to contain. Because, in the end, they had all learned the most important lesson. Love has no borders. It knows no social class. It doesn't care about money or status. Love simply exists, pure and true, and it transforms everything it touches. Megan had entered that house as an invisible maid, and she had become a daughter, a sister, a friend, a savior. She had become essential. She had become loved, and that house, which began cold and sad, had been transformed into a true home. A place where what mattered wasn't the marble on the floors or the gold on the chandeliers. What mattered were the people inside, united not by obligation or convention, but by choice and genuine love. Years later, when Megan got married and had her own children, Sophia was her maid of honor. And when Sophia graduated from college, it was Megan who was in the front row crying with pride. The two women had forged a bond that neither time nor distance could break. Christine had also changed profoundly. She became involved in social projects, helping other vulnerable families, and she always said it was Megan who opened her eyes to the real world, to real people, to real love. Robert, for his part, never forgot that drive to the Bronx. That day he saw Megan's reality up close, and that experience changed not only his family life, but also his business decisions. He began to invest in social programs, creating opportunities for people like Megan, people who just needed a chance. And it all started with a blood donation, with an act of selfless kindness, with a humble young woman who had something rare in her veins, but something even more precious in her heart. The capacity to love without measure, without expectation, without caring about the differences the world insists on creating. Megan had proven that true wealth isn't found in bank vaults or mansions. It's found in the ability to recognize human worth, to choose love over prejudice, to understand that family is built with presence, care, and genuine devotion. And when she looked back on the path she had traveled, Megan knew she wouldn't change a thing. Every pain, every tear, every difficult moment had been worth it, because it had led her here, to this place of peace, of love, of belonging. The blood donation saved a life in that cold hospital. But the daily donation of love, patience, and dedication saved so much more. It saved an entire family. It saved a little girl from darkness. It saved a marriage on the brink of collapse. It saved a woman from prejudice and coldness. And it saved a humble young woman from invisibility, giving her not just a name but a story of love, resilience, and transformation that would be told for generations. And so, in that New York mansion, where it all began with pain and despair, true happiness now reigned, the happiness that comes from making the right choices, even when they are the hardest, the happiness that comes from opening your heart to the impossible, the happiness that comes from finally understanding that love is the only thing that truly matters. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Megan, Sophia, Robert, and Christine has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of love, resilience, and transformation, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what part of the story resonated with you the most. Was it Megan's courage? Christine's change of heart? The unconditional love between Megan and Sophia? Share your feelings with us. Every day we bring you intense and true stories like this one, stories that reveal the deepest parts of the human soul, that make us reflect on the value of our choices and the transformative power of love. We'll see you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions and make you believe that even in the most difficult situations, love always finds a way. Until next time.